books are better than the movies. Or are they? It's an infamous quote that books are better than adaptations, and a lot of people will take this to their grave. But in the 2000s, there was a massive boom of all these different books getting adapted. Of course, I ended up seeing the movies first because I wasn't that into the books and the reading at that age. And quite a common theme around these was taking just the first book in the trilogy and absolutely decimating it so that the other two would not be made to the same quality. I thought it would be fun to read these books, see these movies, and make some comparisons. A venture that has gone on for several years. It was literally back in like 2020 that I first had the idea for this video. I'm a slow reader. Today, I'm gonna compare books to their TV show and movie adaptations. Now this will become a series, so I welcome your recommendations down in the comments, keeping in mind that I won't get to all of them because some authors are absolute pieces of shit, and I don't want to promote their works in positive lights. And this is something that I have done before on this very channel. If you want to check out the one that I did for Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, which got adapted 3 times into a visual format, then you should go check out this video here. I also don't know how fast I'll be able to get to your request. As I established earlier, I am a slow reader, and my to be read and to be watched list is extensive as it is. I think I'll be lucky if I can get to doing one of these videos per year. And we're going to be starting off with 4 books for this video. I was hoping to do 5, but as I was writing these scripts, I discovered that I had a lot to say about each one, so I'd rather not this video go on for forever. So let's dive in, starting with Inkheart by Cornelia Funk. This is the first book in a trilogy, and the other 2 books never got adapted. The original premise of Inkheart is that people can read things out of pages. Maggie discovers this when people that her father has read out of books start to meddle in their lives. Some of them wanting to return to the books that they were read out of, and others wanting to summon dark forces from the books that they were from and bring them into the Earth world to be able to take it over. This book was initially published in 2003 in German, I believe, and then it got translated and the movie came out in 2008. With a lot of changes. Now, I watched the movie first, and I really enjoyed it when I watched it in my preteens for the first time. But as an adaptation, there's a lot of changes that I personally dislike now that I've read the book. First off is Dustfinger. Dustfinger was my second favorite character in the book, and I don't know why they changed him in the ways that they did. Dustfinger is a fire dancer and a street performer that was read out of Inkheart by Mo, Maggie's dad. In the first book, he didn't show any kind of magical powers, but in the movie, he was very much magical. He could breathe fire without having to do any tricks and like summon it in his hands and stuff, but he couldn't do that in the book. I personally don't think that he needed to conjure fire magically to make the plot progress as it did. He didn't need to do it in the book, so why change that in the movie? Second, at least from what I read and interpreted in the books, Dustfinger did not want to go back into Inkheart because of a love interest. He was just deeply and utterly homesick. Was that not enough of a motivation for the writers of this adaptation? I did discover while researching this video that his love interest does have prominence and does exist in books 2 and 3, but this was never mentioned in book 1. For the sake of the movie, I didn't think it was necessary for Dustfinger to want to go back for his wife when the wife was not actively involved. Now we must talk about Capricorn, played by Andy Serkis in the movie. I found him to be too warm. He was supposed to be brutal and with the coldest heart known to mankind in the books, but he displayed too much hospitality and kindness in the movie for Capricorn and was just joking and jolly way too much. I don't think Capricorn cracked a single joke in the Inkheart book. I mean, I did have some issues with Capricorn in book 1 not showing his full powers and more just being intimidating, but if that changes in the second book, then I've yet to work it out. Still, Capricorn could have been way colder in the movie. My third issue was Mo, played by Brendan Fraser, who I found was the inspiration for Mo in the first place. I don't have any issues with how Mo was played, but the main issue I had was that they made him the main character of the movie when the main character in the book was Maggie. Which makes sense in the worst ways. Brendan Fraser was probably the actor that got people to come in and watch it because the 2000s was his like movie acting peak. He was everywhere. He was like, was it The Mummy, Journey to the Center of the Earth? So Brendan Fraser and Inkheart would draw people in. But I don't like how so much of the story was rewritten for his perspective over Maggie's. There's one change I feel middling on, and that was how that they changed the books that characters got read out of. The only one that they kept the same was 1001 Arabian Nights, I believe. But it makes sense. They were probably choosing a bunch of books and material that they would be able to read out of due to different rights. Because I think there's a difference between the rights you can do for books versus the rights that you can do for movies, and so they had to swap out books and reduce the number of books that characters got read out of and were reading out of. For instance, Wizard of Oz, that was never mentioned in the actual plot of Inkheart, yet it was read out of like 2 or 3 times in the movie. I also have opinions about the tone. It was way lighter in the movie. The books were surprisingly dark. There were moments that literally had me like gasping and on edge. And a very pivotal thing, plot-wise, they decide that in the movie, Mo never owned the book that his wife got read into and trapped in. Why the fuck would you do that? I feel like change-wise, the only one that I did like was the pacing. Inkheart was a slow-paced book, even though the stuff that happened in the slow-paced book was more interesting than some of the fast-paced stuff that they did, for instance, escaping Capricorn's village for the first time. Maggie and Eleanor were very well done, though I think I liked their book interpretations better, but I still really enjoyed the actresses that played Eleanor and Maggie. And I also think the decisions that they made to keep the story contained into one movie instead of extending it into a franchise were good decisions. Also, this doesn't really count, but every trailer that I watched for this to help refresh my memory of the movie spoiled the biggest plot twist in Inkheart. Like, it was literally the first thing in the trailer was the biggest spoiler in the movie, which is so stupid. So yeah, I'd recommend that you would read the book Inkheart, unless you had a giant massive crush on Brendan Fraser still. Now we're going to talk about one of my favorite books of all time, The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. It remains a book near and dear to my heart that started a hyperfixation on World War II fiction that ended around the time that my quarter-life crisis started. The Book Thief follows the life of Liesel for about 4 years after her birth mothers died. She ends up getting fostered by different parents in a German village, and they deal with a lot of stuff happening as Hitler comes into power, and they hide a Jew to keep him protected, and they see the impacts of good old Nazis. They are not good, actually. I should not have said that. I think the casting of this movie was very well done. These characters felt real, were appropriately casted, and played very well off of each other. Jeffrey Rush as Hans and Emily Watson as Rosa were especially entertaining. I loved the way that the husband and wife dynamic was within this movie. They did do some changes for the amount of time that this story takes place over for the movie, which makes sense working with child actors in a sense. They shortened it from 4 years to 2 years, I believe. I didn't find anything changed about that age-wise to be particularly upsetting. In fact, I still praise what they did with the child actors for one thing above all else. Adaptations involving children and teenagers often these days make the kids not act like kids. They act way more mature than they actually are and should be, which has put me off a lot of different adaptations and just media as a whole going forward. Spoiler for my Percy Jackson video, especially that TV series. But Liesel and Rudy in The Book Thief both feel like and act like the ages that they are portraying, having these fun, adorable, youthful moments while still being able to have some of the more serious moments about the ways that their lives are getting affected by the Nazi Party. So overall and on paper, this was a good adaptation. Except death. Death is a pivotal character in The Book Thief as the narrator and the person who I say person, he's a being, that we see the entire plot fold out through. I felt his presence was not as strong as I had hoped for, and there were a lot of changes that they made surrounding Death as a result. There are parts of the story that Death spoils as you read it, namely some character deaths. And because they weren't spoiled in the movie, a lot of parts did not hit the same way. In the book, it makes you grieve early and the sadness lasts a lot longer throughout the book, but in the movie, when those particular characters died, it felt rushed. Death also provides a lot of context and darkness to the movie that I felt was missed. His lack of presence didn't make the movie feel quite as moving or dark as a result, and thus the themes of the book thief did not quite hit as hard. Furthermore, color was a common storytelling theme used in the book thief that was completely missed in the film. Which makes sense, they were going for something that was very safe, having a lot of the brown sepia-ness of the typical historical fiction movies that get put out today. But I feel like it would have been really revolutionary if they used color in similar ways that they did in the book. It could have really struck chords and have those themes get hit even harder. I hear there is a book thief musical that was staged a couple years ago that Marcus Suzak spoke so highly of, but I do not know how it compares because it was a short run and I did not have the money, budget, or time to fly over to Australia to see it. Ultimately, The Book Thief is one of my favorite books of all time, so it makes sense that I've got higher standards of it compared to probably most people. I especially think that because I saw the movie after I read the book, which is a rare instance for me. So this adaptation still passes, but I think it could have been better. It's very, very safe. Now we're moving on to Catch-22. One of the worst books that I have read in my life. What, did you think I was just only going to include books that I liked in here? I read the book as the TV series was coming out because I saw trailers of it and I found the premise to be intriguing. And then I decided, what the hell, I'll read the book first and compare it to the adaptation. I should not have done that. Reading Catch-22 was very difficult. This book was written non-linearly, and at no point does it clearly indicate this. It made the storyline very confusing to follow along with. The ways that lines got repeated so much, and all these characters with their faces blurring together as I try to work out if they're new or introduced already. It makes the novel feel very deja vu, which is apparently the point, to follow along from these same events from different perspectives, and the knowledge that you know making it more funny, which I didn't really see. I did not find the book funny. The main character, Yasarin, was framed as a bit of a dick when I read the book. Him and Milo were the only two characters that I end up remembering from the entire plot. I remember liking Milo while reading it and hating Yasarin. I cannot tell you why, because of how confusing it was to read. Maybe it was just because of the framing of the story, he seems just rude and lazy to everyone. So why did I end up going to watch the TV series in the end when I hated the book so much? Well, it was those TV trailers that convinced me to actually read it in the first place. And perhaps do a little bit of a comparison. And boy did I compare right from the get-go. It did not take me long to start actually liking the story and work out what was going on. Because they got rid of the non-linear narrative. Fuck yes. Yasarin no longer looked like an absolute dick. He looked like he was absolutely scared. He was a man terrified beyond his mind and getting manipulated by military personnel. And he was doing whatever he could to not get killed in action or worse. It finally made me see the genius of the story that was actually written. A dark comedy with excellent writing and pacing in case of the show, about the effect of war on soldiers. With some bizarre things going on like Milo's tomato empire, someone getting promoted to a major just because his last name was Major, and of course some very dark things in the end too to really hit the message home about how bad war is. It's like an anti-war story, but from the inside. A war story mole! The TV show reversed a lot of things that made me hate the book straight away, and it made it linear, which I repeat was such a blessing for me. They made it digestible. They perfected the tone. They knew when to be funny and when to take things absolutely serious. So yes, I would say that for once, the TV show was better than the book. You basically need to be a detective or have a doctorate in English to be able to read the original Catch-22 or read it multiple times, which a friend recommended me to do. I didn't want to. The TV series, you do not need to do that. Do not be pretentious, just go and watch the Catch-22 show. Now we're moving on to our double feature. This is something I'm going to be doing at the end of each of these videos where I do a discussion about a book that was adapted twice, and we work out what the better adaptation is. This has been a book series that has been adapted multiple times, and because of the content that did get adapted in both versions, we're only going to be discussing the first 3 books of this series. A series of unfortunate events, which is a 13-part series. The TV show did all 13 episodes, and the movie only did the first 3 books, so we're just going to be talking about the bad beginning, the reptile room, and the wide window getting adapted. A series of unfortunate events has been adapted for a screen viewing format twice, the first one being a movie starring Jim Carrey as Count Olaf, and the second one with Neil Patrick Harris starring as Count Olaf in a TV series. We're going to start with the Jim Carrey one. The movie took the first 3 books and decided to make just those 3 a contained story, with a gothic spin to it that wasn't really in the books ever. There was never an indication that the book series was gothic in any way. How gothic is a lumber mill to you, for instance? Granted, that's book 4, and we're only talking about the first 3 books. They did switch some things out of order in these books. They decided to take the conclusion to book 1, make it more epic, and put it at the end of the story. They even hinted at some things that come more into fruition in later books, at least from my memory, such as the VFD spyglass. VFD was never really mentioned at all in a series of unfortunate events until book 5, for the record. I also find an issue with the 2 sisters, Violet and Sunny, losing their agency in the end of the movie. Klaus being the only one to save them both? That feels sexist, considering in other moments throughout the story it has always been the 3 of them taking turns to save everybody. So why is it just Klaus in the climax that saves them? Which didn't even happen in the original books. It was Violet who did the saving of herself and her siblings in book 1 by using some fancy logic stuff, and then Klaus came in to support her. Count Olaf's portrayal as Jim Carrey didn't quite feel right to me either. He's meant to be an intimidating figure in spite of his eccentric nature. Jim Carrey leaned more into the eccentric than the intimidating to me. Which is what Jim Carrey does, but maybe no one else in Hollywood was more prominent or more willing to come in and be Count Olaf. Now, the TV series with Neil Patrick Harris. I liked his Olaf a lot better. It shows his range as an actor very well about how he's able to be both taken seriously and not taken seriously at the same time and in the same sort of ways. His crew also have a lot more of a presence as well, his acting troupe, which I really enjoyed as well, just seeing the banter that got played between all of them. Patrick Warburton as the narrator figure of Lemony Snicket was also a very great choice. He's able to deliver lines so dryly, exactly the way that things are written in the books. Even better, I would say. He makes all the things which I sometimes read as sarcastic and condescending, reading it as an adult, again, make more like satirical, more comedy-ness of it. The TV series as a whole just has so much more character to it. The character that is present in the books and then gets amplified. While the movie heaved more towards the dark of dark comedy, the TV series leaned more into the comedy of dark comedy. Furthermore, there was a lot more information and depth that these characters brought in from even those first 3 episodes. Adaptations? I don't know. The episodes are like half a book each, so it's difficult to describe this. This is something that I think a lot of adaptations should do, is build upon the original content and make something new and exciting for you to watch, so that they both are able to stand on their own, the original and the adaptation. It's so refreshing to watch more perspectives than just those of the Baudelaire children. There's so many antics that everyone literally gets up to. I haven't even watched all of the Series of Unfortunate Events TV series, just because I'm still doing like a book and TV show comparison, but right now I highly recommend it, and I've only seen the first 2 seasons. Thus concludes my first comparison video. Like I said earlier in this video, be sure to put your recommendations down in the comments for what else you want to see me do a comparison for. I've already got some lined up and on my TBR, so I'm both excited and weary because apparently some of these adaptations that I'm going to read the books of first are terrible. So please subscribe as well if you want to see the next episode and give this a like. All that good YouTube stuff. And I shall see you in another world.